Hi guys, Alex Newman here, and I'm here with Dr. Juliette Engel. She's one of the speakers here at the Red Pill Expo, and she wrote a book about her horrifying experience having been involved in the CIA's really wacky operations, evil operations, including Operation Paperclip and MK-Ultra. The title of your book was Sparky, was Surviving Sex Magic. So, Dr. Engel, tell us a little bit about your childhood. How did you get sucked into this world?
Well, my uncle and my great-uncles were all OSS German-speaking American operatives at the Nuremberg trials. So they were instrumental in bringing over probably hundreds of Nazi scientists who'd done experimentation on concentration camp victims for about 20 years, including the mind control experiments and the first experiments in transhumanism and creating what they called cyborgs. And so when I was 6 years old, my father took me to the park to meet a associate of his, and basically he drugged me with a bottle of Coca-Cola, and basically the associate of my father then raped me in front of him, and made me watch him take the money. And so that was my indoctrination into the MK-Ultra program, and it went on from there. Various annexes, different places that everywhere we lived, we moved often because the schools would pick up on something very wrong in our family, and then we would move to a new place, and it would all start again. So it was described to me as the secret butterfly program. So we were given little pins that looked like birds, but told that they were actually butterflies. And there you go with the programming, because the initiation into every programming session, they would tie me to a wheel, would spin the wheel faster and faster and faster while people around it chanted, "There is no good, there is no bad, there is no light, there is no dark, there is no day, there is no night." And it would go on and on and on. There is no black, there is no white. There is only, when you're just spitting and ready to throw up, they say there's only green. And green is the obliteration, the destruction of all consciousness and of all humanity. And at that point, you're supposed to be no longer human.
It's just, as a father, it's hard for me to comprehend how a father could allow something like that to happen, or even participate in something like that happening to his child. What's the story with that? Was he a monster? And by the way, folks, OSS is the Office of Strategic Services. That was the precursor to the CIA. But what was the deal with your dad?
I really don't know. He was obviously involved with the CIA. He was stationed at various places along the southern border, so I spent a lot of time very close to Mexico, I guess close as you could get to Mexico. They were paid. They made me watch while the associate who had molested me paid my father. And when I was begging him for help, he said, "This is what I raised you for." It created, I couldn't trust my father. So I had nowhere in my life that I could trust. And if it wasn't for well-meaning teachers and school districts and social workers in schools, I don't know what would have happened to me. And I also had a grandmother who was a Christian, and my parents were atheists, and the whole program was satanic and involved blatant Satan worship, black masses, saturnalias, which I describe in my book, Sparky. And I forgot where I was going.
Well, what was the purpose of these experiments? What was the purpose of these programs? Was this just evil for the sake of evil? Were they researching, trying to accomplish something? They wanted to control your mind, or what was the deal?
Well, the MK and MK-Ultra stands for Mein Kampf, which is Hitler's book, his manifesto for National Socialism, and stands for My Struggle. And if you read the last 300 pages of this 1,000-page ponderous tome, he describes his plan for the Third Reich, basically, for the future of the New World Order. And in that, he describes a race of slaves who come through the psychological conditioning and become operatives all over the world for the controllers, for him basically, for the National Socialists.
And so were you supposed to become one of these operatives then?
Yes. So they recruited the children of high-level government people in industry, people from the intelligence communities, because they had the best chance, I think, of becoming then academics and infiltrating State Department, high-level government agencies. And they did that. They really did that. So Hollywood was involved. A lot of my conditioning and training went on at Disneyland, where they would take us there. I was sent out in the crowd, told to pick up a man. I was like 8 years old at the time, and get him to molest me in one of the rides at Disneyland, where I knew there was a camera, and they'd be taking pictures. So that was all part of the becoming a seductress or learning those skills. And so the programs took place in Seattle, all over different places in California, Chicago, and quite a bit of my time was spent down on the border of Mexico.
And what's the nexus with transhumanism? I mean, you're saying these people wanted to transcend the human, kind of like Adolf Hitler talking about the superhumans that he wanted to create. So what was the objective there?
Well, you take your core of future leaders, and you punish them, you abuse them, you terrify them, you sexually abuse them to the point where they just can't stand it anymore. And then you give them the option. Either they ride what's called the freedom train, which is you die, or you give up your soul. And a fair number, of course, died. You've seen the 27 Club, and the number of people young musicians and talented individuals that seem to commit suicide for no reason. That's one way out. The other way out is to surrender your soul. And once you've surrendered your soul, you get all the bling, all the rewards, all the accolades. Every door is open to you. You're placed in positions of power, even though you may be a very mediocre candidate. You wonder how these awful singers get to be singing in the Super Bowl when there's so many more talented people. Well, it's because they're part of this world, and their belief is that they will become the supermen. And that they become the transhumans. So they are in the process of becoming, when I was young, they called it cyborgs. So it's when humans could unite with machines and get parts that were artificially made. And
that's happening right now. I mean, we have people who are right now becoming cyborgs. They're speaking at the World Government Summit. It's pretty amazing. Did you ever report any of this to law enforcement? I mean, was there ever police investigations? Did any of these people ever get brought to justice?
I was involved in multiple police investigations because I was involved in a lot of child abuse accusations, and I would tell everybody. And nobody listened. Absolutely nobody listened. And then I'd be severely punished for speaking out. I ran away once to a church and tried to tell a whole church full of people what was going on. And they just looked at me like I was trying to explain that I was in a program that was sponsored by the NSA. And those people had never even heard of the NSA. And up until 2 years ago, I think that's pretty much true of the general public. So it's like, how could they understand? But I was desperate to tell somebody. I would tell my teachers, they would send me to the social workers would visit my house, and then within a week we would move to another place. So I went to new schools a couple times a year, and it was constant change. And I would be in school half the time. The other half the time I would be in a program and undergoing whatever they were doing. And a lot of it I don't remember because a lot of it involved drugs. But eventually I would be brought home, and I suffered from severe anemia, although no one could figure out why. So they were taking my blood, and I would go back to, I would erase everything that was so traumatic, and that's how they created multiple identities in their victims. I certainly still have that problem. And
so you have multiple identities now, or you still struggle with that?
I struggle with the fact that I'll kind of drift from one to the other. I don't notice it, but other people do. And it's also a handy tool when you're working in another country.